Good day, folks. Everything new under the sun. Bible prophecy doesn't stop occurring, even if we're in the middle of holidays, Christmas time being the current, and New Year's coming up. And I will say Merry Christmas and Happy New Year's to all. But this is kind of my prediction video, if you will. I was thinking about what to do about this, and I think 2023. I'll agree with this particular author and say, yeah, 2023 is the year of the famine. Now, I've been talking about 7 good years and 7 bad years. In the pattern to Jews is prophecy. Pattern is prophecy. So when you see a pattern in the Bible, it often repeats itself time and time again, and in biblical times, in history, and into the future as well. Prophetically, pattern is prophecy, and I think the same is happening here. Of course, we know that Daniel speaks of a 7-year peace agreement that the Antichrist puts in place, that the world agrees to, and that quickly becomes 7 bad years because the Antichrist rules and reigns with an iron fist. He sets up the abomination of desolation in the third temple, and then the wrath of God comes in the latter half of that 7-year period. So there's there's a bad 7 years, and if prophecy is pattern, then I would expect 7 good years to be prior to that. Now, these are the verses in, this is BibleGateway.com. You can go to it, Genesis 41. This is from the King James. And it speaks about Joseph in Egypt. Of course, Joseph was sold into slavery by his brothers. They faked his death to his father. He worked his way up in Pharaoh's household, Potiphar's household, and became second in command. And he was able to decipher a dream by God's blessing and direction that Pharaoh had about a strange period of time. And this is what the verses say. Chapter 41. And it came to pass at the end of 2 full years that Pharaoh dreamed, and behold, he stood by the river. And behold, there came up out of the river 7 well-favored kine and fat-fleshed, and they fed in a meadow. And behold, 7 other kine came up after them out of the river, ill-favored, lean-fleshed, and stood by the other kine upon the brink of the river. And the ill-favored and lean-fleshed kine did eat up the 7 well-favored and fat kine. So Pharaoh awoke. Now Pharaoh, of course, went to all his wise men and said, who can decipher this dream? And they said, well, there's this guy in jail, Joseph, and he's a Hebrew, and he's a servant of the Lord. He can decipher this dream. And so it goes on. It says, and Joseph said unto Pharaoh, when he was brought before him to tell Pharaoh what this meant, the dream of the Pharaoh is one God hath shewed Pharaoh, which he is about to do. The 7 good kine are 7 years. The 7 good ears are 7 years. The dream is one. And the 7 thin and ill-favored kine that came up after them are 7 years. And the 7 empty ears blasted with the east wind, ears of corn, that's the part of the dream that I didn't read, shall be 7 years of famine. 7 years. So this 7 years comes up again, over and over again. Pattern equals prophecy. Is there something prophetic to this? This is the thing which I have spoken unto Pharaoh. What God is about to do, he showeth unto Pharaoh. Behold, there come 7 years of great plenty throughout all the land of Egypt, and there shall arise after them 7 years of famine. And all the plenty that shall be forgotten in the land of Egypt, and the famine shall consume the land, and the plenty shall not be known in the land by reason of that famine following, for it shall be very grievous. Now, what do we have in the stock market? We have had uninterrupted growth pretty much from 2008 all the way up. The stock market was going up, going up, going up. What do we have in the crypto scene? We had cryptos going up, 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 Bitcoin up, 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 up. Seemed to be no end. Does it all seem to be coming down right now? Certainly crypto is. And the economy is only being kept alive on life support by printing of trillions and trillions of dollars, and now the war machine. Now, what happens when all else fails? They take you to war. War is a great resetter of economies. If there's trouble in the economy, what better way to distract people from the trouble in the economy and the trouble in the supply chain? What better way than to take them to war? What does this do? It redirects them. It causes them to rally behind the current leadership, the current president or prime minister. It causes them to come together and forget about their struggles in the name of peace and security, in the name, and under the flag of the country, etc., and to focus on a big boogeyman rather than dealing with things local at home. They can wait till later because there's a big war. And so this is exactly what we see happening. So I suspect that this war really is a cover-up for what is economic collapse. The people in the know what's happening, knew it was coming this whole time. This whole system, they know that every economic system comes to an end at some point. It transitions to something else. It always does. It has always in history, and it always will. They know this. They're trying to keep it afloat again by printing money. But 2023... the famine that's coming in 2023, and this will be, I guess, my prediction, outside of the fact that 2023 will be worse than 2022, and 2023, as we move from January to February, February to March, March to April, and so on, it will continually get worse and worse, just like the economic situation here is worse and worse as gas goes up, as energy increases, as the price of food. We have a 12% inflation where we are in Canada, the highest inflation across Canada of any of the provinces and territories. So massive inflation. The price of everything is increasing, but our paychecks aren't increasing very much. That means we can't afford as much food or the food that we would normally get. We have to pick and choose. We have to get cheaper alternatives. At some point, it will get bad enough to where we simply can't put all the food on our table that we used to because we simply can't afford it anymore. Now, we are still, certainly in the good years. We're at the very end of the 7 good years in relation to this prophecy and the last days and the 7 last years that the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse ride in and the wrath of God comes in, and that the Antichrist triggers. We're in the 7 good years, the very end of it, where you can still go to your grocery store in North America, even in Europe, and generally get what you need. Your money is still worth something. Food is still generally plentiful, although a little bit more expensive. But it hasn't got to the point of famine. But I think we head over the hill to that point of famine in 2023. And this is, I'll agree with this particular article, and I'll read a couple of excerpts from it. So this is a person writing about what she thinks is going to happen in 2023. September 28, 2022, I hear the Holy Spirit saying, 2023, the year of famine, as I was led to read through Nehemiah 5 for the 3rd time this past week. This is what was highlighted to me. And this is, I found this interesting. Men with large families will have trouble feeding their children. Others will will refinance or remortgage their properties to survive. Others will borrow money to make do. In the latter case, brothers will take advantage of them and think that it will be only fair to charge a little interest, given they will enable their survival. So there will become people that are opportunistic in this time and really take advantage of people who don't have a lot of money. Now, men with large families, that's interesting. Who has large families in this day and age? Well, it's often, Christians, Muslims, people in India, China, some of the poorer nations, they have lots of kids. So it's those people specifically that's going to get hit. That's interesting. Maybe generally those who are of faith, for example, that are going to get hit. I think it's interesting. It seems like a bit of a test, a trial, and a sharpening of those, and a testing of those. So interesting that it maybe hits people with large families, and it makes sense, of course, a famine. You're going to have to pay more for the food. But all the people who chose not to have kids, well, this is going to be what all the leaders say: don't have kids. You can't afford to feed them anyways. And this is what Satan wants. He wants to kill as many people as possible and limit any procreation. And that's why homosexuality rages, because that's what the devil wants. He doesn't want men being born, made in God's image, to come to life in this world, because that's God's plan. That's not his plan. He wants to rule and reign himself, and he is not able to be God, although he wants to be God. Others will refinance or remortgage. Now we have a friend who is remortgaging. Now, not necessarily because of famine, but because of other sinful and evil things that are happening in that situation. And so people are actively now remortgaging. Look, as interest rates increase, people will not be able to afford their $500,000 home. $500,000. That was kind of the going rate where I am. You couldn't find a house under $350,000. Meanwhile, a couple of years before that, a standard house would be $100,000 to $200,000. And with interest rates increasing, people can't make their payments anymore. It was at a point where during the pandemic, you'd maybe find a house for $400,000, $450,000, $500,000. You'd say, well, there's nothing else you can buy. Everybody's paying this price for houses, so we have to get it. And then you're locked in. And then when house prices go down, you're stuck over your head. You're underwater with your house, and interest rates are rising, and you can't afford the monthly payments on it. So people are going to have trouble. They're going to have to remortgage to survive. And so it's interesting that this is what the outcome of COVID was. The high prices, people bought in and didn't stay where they were because they thought it was a good opportunity to sell, maybe. And now they're stuck with big mortgages, which they thought was just going to be the norm going forward. And brothers taking advantage of each other. This is what happens when society starts to break down. People take advantage of each other, make some people worse off, and sin abounds, and evil abounds in hard times like this. October 1st, 2022. 2023 is going to be a year of famine. And I think this is also proven out by just the situation where the world is. It should be obvious to everybody, with energy prices increasing, with fertilizer not coming out of Russia, Ukraine, etc., with food limitations, Ukraine not producing as much, Russia, obviously people aren't buying it as much, and then when you have places like where is it, the Netherlands? I think I'm thinking of the wrong location, but they're telling farmers that you can't farm anymore because of climate change. So you can't produce food anymore. So the governments are doing it to us themselves. They're limiting the food supply, and food is going to skyrocket. And with all these things, right now we all have our storehouses full of wheat and oil and all these things, and gasoline. The gasoline reserves were filled up even in Europe, but now they're starting to go through them, and they're not going to be able to restock them this summer. There's going to be a huge demand, especially as China gets going again after the lockdowns. There's going to be huge demand for everything. The price of everything is going to skyrocket, and there's going to be famine throughout the world. So I think maybe 2023 is the true start, the realization of the famine across the land as it was in the days of Joseph in Egypt, kicking off the 7 bad years, and it will continue as well as we continue in war. As famine persists, war will go even deeper, and we're going to have an economic reset. I believe we're close to the Antichrist appearing and coming out of nowhere and saying, you know what, let's bring peace to the table. Note that Putin himself is saying, you know what, we're ready for peace, but the West doesn't want peace. Interesting. There's an article on, I think it's a top article on Zero Hedge that he's, let me just see if I can pull that up here. Again, it's interesting. I said, you know what, the West hasn't been looking for peace, and it's very true. So this is a Zero Hedge. Let's see. Putin ready to negotiate end to the Ukraine war, but who is keeping it going? But the West wants to tear apart Russia. We are ready to negotiate with everyone involved, but acceptable solutions, but that is up to them. We are not the ones refusing to negotiate. They are. So time and time again, it's Russia that's come out and said, you know what, we're not the ones who don't want to come to the negotiating table. You don't see the U.S. in any strong amount trying to create peace. No, they're just sending Patriot missile systems, more arms, $45 trillion to Ukraine to continue the fight. Putin knows we're in World War III. The U.S. knows it as well, but they're fighting a proxy war, and as long as it doesn't touch individual Americans' lives, no individual American is going to stand up and say anything about it. And this is going to lead us again into a new world order, an economic reset, which is what they need to continue the economic Ponzi scheme that is currently happening. So, folks, I don't think this ends until some big nuclear weapons are dropped until the world is brought to its knees, and we could be seeing this in the spring of 2023. It will lead to famine. Everything is in slow motion, by the way. We think things happen fast in the span of a week, 2 weeks, and at some point things will come crashing down very, very quickly. But right now things are going slowly. No one wants to get into kind of overt superpower to superpower war. Of course, they don't want the economic system to crash in the span of a day, because that would cause chaos. And they're not interested in chaos. The people who are involved in this, they're interested in making the maximum amount of money and transferring power through that system to the new system, and keep ensuring that they hold power throughout the transition. So they have no interest in violence or chaos that could occur from a catastrophic collapse of the economy. So they're doing everything they can to prevent that. And again, what better way than to go to war, distract everybody, reset the economy in the name of, having to do this for the country, for the good of the people, for your fellow citizen, just like, the jab was introduced during the pandemic for, it's not for you, it's for everybody else. Do it for the good of the people, for the collective good. This is what the health services say. And they're going to reset the whole system. So, folks, famine in 2023, I do agree with this particular writer. And I think this is pretty much obvious to everyone that this is happening. But this is my prediction for 2023 famine and everything that comes with it: war, violence, the love of many will grow cold, and we will see very hard times, violent times, and the government will come in and crack down. They will use their force. They will take away your freedoms to prevent absolute revolution and anarchy. So thanks for watching, folks. It's an exciting time to be alive, because we know the Lord's returning. We know Bible prophecy is being fulfilled. We know we're on the precipice of something big. That something big is, I believe, the end of the 7 good years and the start of the 7 bad years. We're getting very, very close to the start of that 7 bad years. Be prepared. Times are going to be hard. It's going to be like nothing else we've ever seen in our lifetimes. Maybe only people from World War II, whoever is still alive, may have some indication of what life was like back then. But none of us since then obviously have dealt with any sort of hardship in the Western world. And so because of that, we're going to be even more vulnerable to mental collapse, societal collapse, etc. And so the government's got to keep a tight grip on all of us, because we will panic very, very quickly. We are not self-sufficient. We do not have skills and abilities like they did 100 years ago to survive on their own, to grow a garden. And so the government will need to get involved and will need to control the population. And this is what we will see in 2023. Famine, martial law, very likely in some effect, maybe climate lockdowns, and other things to prevent people from losing their minds over things that are happening, that are coming upon them. And what does the Bible say about the last days? Men's hearts will fail for fear of things that are coming upon them in those last days. And that's what I think we'll see. 2023 is going to be a pivotal year, as I believe we head into the 7-year period. I haven't called that it started yet. I'm still waiting for things. I don't know exactly when it's going to start. No one does, except the Father in heaven. But I think you can all agree that we're very close. Thanks for watching, folks. We'll see you in the next video.